Nice.
I think there's like a board game that my girlfriend found over quarantine that it's basically, it lists like, well, each card has a weird death that someone had. It's like a Darwin Awards game. And then you have to decide whether it was real or made up, which is like, there's no skill level to it. And so we played it once for like 20 minutes and was like, this is kind of dumb. Like
yeah.
Like I just want to read the cards.
Game? I thought you were saying that it was like actually a blast and a half, but it's just a deck of cards.
Yeah,
and you have a flip of a coin shot getting it right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a little short term.
And then like Hasbro was like, that sounds great. Let's ship people out of $25.99.
I think I could probably sell some sort of gimmicky board game, and that's totally my goal. I want to make something that people are like, this is dumb. I played it for 20 minutes. I shouldn't have bought this.
But you can't
so
take
much
it back.
money in that. Yeah. There's so much money in that.
Mm-hmm. See, we just gave you a business idea. So at the very least, this podcast has brought you one idea. So we've done it.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for joining us on today's episode.
But Stephen, who are some of your inspirations?
When you said Sarah Silverman, another relief. I was like, I cite her a lot and I wrote my two favorite comedians maybe of all time are Sarah Silverman and Reggie Watts.
Oh, interesting.
Reggie Watts, because he's just so creative with his improvisation and his accents and stuff, and is just his type of sense of humor. And then Sarah Silverman for her level of satire and like tongue-in-cheek humor that she does. There's a bunch more, but I can't remember them as easily as them two. So those are that
I'd be very interested to see your stand-up, Steve.
Oh yeah, I'm also a one-liner kind of a comic too. So I feel like I'd like your comedy.
The Reggie Watts influence. As much as I like him, he wasn't like a real influence, but I thought that was just such an interesting style of comedy. That's like when sometimes people are like alternative mainstream, I'm like, that guy is alternative, but he made it one of the more mainstream of all the people. So it's like blurs the lines even more.
Actually, you know what? I would say that he's not he's inspirational, but I don't do anything quite like him, although I am an accents person. I've never implemented that into...
What kind of accents?
Oh, just whatever. David hears it all the time. Just all kinds of stuff.
Just list a couple.
No
one has ever gotten in trouble for doing accents on a podcast before.
I do impressions of comedians nobody's ever heard of, like Shane Moss.
I know Shane Moss.
Well, yeah,
Shane
you
Moss
do.
is like somebody who from Texas, like one of the. I started in the Valley, South Texas, where I'm from, and he was like. He had already done Conan and I guess like maybe a half hour at that point. And so he was like coming down as, you know, they usually had some other headliners, like some more, it was definitely a Latino circuit. So he was like one of the first people in like, oh, he has a Conan credit. I was so impressed. And I've like begged for them to let me open for him. And it was like one of my first shows ever. And he was really nice. He was really nice. I was so bad. I was so bad. You know when you know you're bad and you like meet people who you actually respect and you look back on it and you're like, I wish they didn't see me. But, But also, I don't know. I doubt anybody would remember those situations as much as I am.
I think what I'm referring to is that if I were to go in front of an audience, a random audience, and go, "Hey, you guys want to hear my Shane Moss impression?" And be like, "Who the fuck is Shane Moss?"
That's fair.
That's the catch there. And plus, it's only good if I've either been yelling all day because it gets my voice raspy enough to kind of get that kind of like his tone. But I definitely have the same register, so it's kind of all built in. I just have to speak a certain way. But I have it recorded on Instagram, but I'd have to go look for it, so I'm not gonna waste you guys' time.
All right,
Brian Kenny,
we'll wait.
Brian Kenny said it was spot on. Brian Kenny's open for him many times. He knows Shane, but just random things that Bear Grylls. Who cares about Bear Grylls anymore? And I used to do it well. I don't do it well anymore because it's a muscle. You know, when you do accents, it's something you have to work on. When you lose it, you lose it. And
so you're saying impressions, really?
Yeah, it's I do dialects too.
Okay.
So it's
a very specific dialect.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just
what accent is that? Oh, it's Bear Grylls.
Bear Grylls-ian.
Yeah, like I don't do generic stuff. Some things are a little generic, but generally I try to do things that are unique but I don't really do it in stand-up though. All my friends know I can do it, and I do it in other capacities. I've done it here and there, but it's not part of my act.
It's a lot more nerve wracking. Like sometimes I'll do little spot on impressions of people of all kinds of different races. No, I'll do spot on impressions of like different celebrities and stuff. Wink, wink. No, but I'll do them, and my girlfriend will be like, "You should put those in your stand up." And I'm like, it just makes me so nervous to do them in my stand up. I'm like, if I fuck it up, it's like a big swing, and I look like an asshole. Like, no, like that didn't sound like who he said it. You know,
you know how like this is our reset. This year is kind of like a good reset for some people. I'm thinking about like changing my approach to comedy because I'm gonna ditch the like wordplay and like the more like, oh, that's a really good observation, or like clever humor, and I want to change it to more like character, like, or something, stuff that I think is funnier than just the stuff that's gotten old over the years, because they've been doing it for like too long, and it's like just
how long, Steve?
I like that.
Since 2012, but I always I like it, and I definitely feel similar to you. How
long have you been doing it?
A lady never tells. I don't know. I forget. Probably around 10 years. It's hard. Like it was like a soft start. So maybe it was longer, but then, really I didn't start grinding until like a year or two after. So that's why I'm like, I think it averages out to 10.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be the case. You don't really count like, oh, I did open mic sporadically for a couple of years, and then I, don't count that. That doesn't.
Where I started, it was those shows. Like Shane Moss was coming down, and I was like, "Can I open?" And they're like, "Sure, we don't care. We have like no other comics like asking to open for Shane Moss. Yeah, go for it." So there weren't really mics as much, and that was like the main problem. There was like one, and it was like sporadic also. So it wasn't until I got to a place that I was able to do more. Denton, Texas, spent some time there. Austin, Texas was a bigger one. That's where I really did mics like as much as humanly possible.
Did you move? Like, when did you make the move to New York, and what influenced that decision?
I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago now. Actually, my girlfriend Kelsey Kane, she had moved here. She had moved here a year before me for school. She was going to graduate school, and she was going to high school. No, she was going to graduate school, and I was like, hey, I don't know. And this is fun. I would tell this story sometimes, and people would like laugh, and I'd be like, huh. But it was like she moved here and was like, we were long distance for a year. She was like, you should move here too. Like, this is where comedy's at. I know how much you love comedy. And I said, I don't know. I might stick around, try to do the funniest person in Austin contest one more time, stay here for a whole other year. And she was just like, that's not a good reason to stay. You should like come over here. And I'm like, that's a good point. So then I moved over. And, within the first year, I got a lot of, really good things. JFL and Kimmel, like within I got those things before I would have even had a chance to do this contest that is completely arbitrary, and I probably would not have even placed. Like why did I think that? Oh well, if I win here, then that'll there are too many. That's to me an example of listening to too many podcasts and interviews. Is like you go through the steps, charting out a map on how I think the career is supposed to look like, and then just really like getting that whole shattered as soon as I moved here. And it's like, oh, it's just about, just doing it and being in front of as many eyes and whatever is possible. There's so many different ways to be successful. And I had a very linear idea.
Yeah, it's really easy to get that information overload too. Because if you do listen to a lot of podcasts, like everybody has their own way. And so you it's easy to be like, ooh, that's a good idea. Ooh, that's a good idea. And now all of a sudden you have 100 ideas and you're not doing any of them well at all. Yeah, this set's going to take me to the next level, baby. That's it.
Well, here's another thing is I got a bunch of meetings after that, like after JFL and after that Kimmel set aired, and they were like, okay, hey, we love that 5-minute set you did. What else you got? And I was like, that 5 minutes? What do you mean? I got that 5 minutes. I didn't know I was supposed to, oh, you don't have like a script or like an audition reel or any of this other stuff. And I was like, no, or like more material even. I'm like, no, why should I? And they're like, yeah. So I felt like I kind of, for a while, I had to like fight the feeling like I wasted an opportunity or like I fucked up some opportunities. And really, it was just like, I don't know, I focused really hard on getting a good late night set and I did it and I got it on TV. So if I just set my mind on something, you know, I know I can do it. So I have to see it more as a positive than, you know, oh, I fucked up for not having other stuff. No, I was working on that. That's how I got it on TV. And that's how it's turned out as good as it did. That's what was my main and only real focus. I'd be comfortable doing more Latino stuff. And actually after that said, I was like, I didn't assume that many in the Latin communities would respond to it because I wasn't even, you know, I made it ambiguous. I made it purposely ambiguous, but there's an online publication called Mitu that is like a very big Latin publication. And they did an article like the next day, like Mexican parentheses, or is he, comedian Martin Urbano kills on Jimmy Kimmel Live. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's super nice. And it's just like, yeah, there's so little Latin representation that even if I'm like barely even slightly acknowledging it, people are like, yes, something, please, anything. It's like, okay, I can make one about that's a little more honest about myself where I don't speak Spanish. So let me call myself a pendejo. So then people are, you know, like, oh, okay, we like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But playing with the ambiguity, to me, what I took from that whole bit is like, none of this matters. Like, doesn't matter what I am. But what's funny to me is so many people will open with like, well, what are you? Who cares? What does that have to do? I'm Martin. Hi, this is who I am as a human. Like that's way more relevant than you know what race I am. We had Greg Stone on the podcast, and he talked about how like as comedians we'll bond way faster as two people who are Italian that have never met before. Like if I, you know, we can strike up a conversation because we have this like kind of shared experience versus, you know, oh, you're Mexican. Let's say I was Mexican. Like, what do we have in common other than, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that I get a lot.
I believe it. Gringo is Spanish for fellow Mexican.
Let me write that down. I'll make sure to say that.
What was the question?
I mean, it was more of a just an observation that it felt to me like you were commenting on the fact that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That was my attitude at that time. And now I'm a little bit more like, okay, I understand why I represent, like after I watched Coco, Pixar's Coco, I was like, oh shit, I've literally never seen myself as a kid represented on screen before. Like that's pretty wild. So I was like, okay, if I can continue making jokes the way I want to, and then also do something like that, that's what would be my goal if I'm going to talk about race again. But at that time, and I still stand by it. Like, it's also like, yeah, it's also kind of not as important, you know, to be like, oh, I have to. But I would see so many comedians. Like I said, I studied late night sets, and they're like, oh, you have to talk about like what you look like and like what, you know, your race and stuff. And I was like, what would be my angle on it? And my angle would be to like fuck with people a little bit because actually, and now I'm remembering that bit started. I didn't have that at all in Texas because everyone was like, you're Mexican, like we know. Yeah. But then I moved to New York and everybody would ask me like, so what race are you? I'm like, why do you keep asking me that? And that it was born out of everybody who kept asking, what race are you? What race are you? And I'm like, okay, there's something here. But I feel like I said everything I needed to say in that vein. And now I'm like, what's like the new way to get into that?
But even the line too, you know, I'm actually Indian. My mom was born in India. Sorry, Native America. Like, I feel like that's a comment on that kind of, it's a misnomer, you know, calling Native Americans Indians. It's like that they're not.
It's like, it confuses people and it's like a dumb little joke. I like that.
Yeah. I would mess with that basically. Like, we're from Cleveland, so we have the Cleveland Indians, the baseball team, and you know at the time they had the Chief Wahoo logo, which is wildly, you know, it's a racist caricature, 100%. But my joke was that, I'm not offended at the caricature. Yeah, get rid of it. But I'm more offended by the fact that we're calling them Indians when they're clearly not. Like, we all agree that this isn't India, right? So the people here aren't actually Indians. So let's match the logo to the name. So if we're gonna get rid of Chief Wahoo, let's just shrink it until all you can see is a red dot right in the middle of the cap on their forehead. Done. Indians.
Look,
sold.
I don't want to erase people's childhoods, and that's the most important thing in society.
The most important thing.
It's people who grew up on that need to continue seeing that, or else they'll be upset.
That Mickey Mouse cartoon where there was all the black faces in there. That's it's gonna ruin my adulthood. I forget who it is who has a bit about like ruining your childhood. Maybe it's Renan. Anyway, I think that's so clever. It's like, no, you can't ruin somebody's childhood. It's already done. The only way you could ruin someone's childhood if you were to send a pedophile back into time. And that's what I think it was.
Oh, I think I just heard a good TV pitch from me.
Pedophile time machine.
Quantum pedophile. Okay. They didn't even go with a clever play. They just put in the word pedophile. All right.
Yeah. Still with Scott Bakula.
It's Scott Bakula side by side.
Gross.
And so this is what that is.
Okay. So this is from what show was it? Was this?
This was at Littlefield. They were doing just like specifically Comedy Central. I love that little hashtag there. Hashtag me too. Hashtag stand up. Okay, that's fun. They put that on the YouTube video. But I feel like if they had put in the title on this, like Martin Urbano does Me Too jokes or something like that, it would have gone not viral, but like it would have gotten like a fuck ton of views just because that is so hot, to talk about. Yeah. But they just wrote Martin Urbano's jokes are offensive, but he's still a good guy, which is kind of a reference to like my hat bit. Mm-hmm. And the bit that they put out there was the hat bit. I wish they had put out the Me Too jokes because I feel like those were probably the freshest jokes I had tried on television. And I feel like they still hold up, but we'll see. I forget.
Yeah. Also, I feel like the copywriting on that, it's like, let's see how many words we can get into this title. Oh, we're out of characters. Like, Jesus.
I want to get that job. I can make every stand-up set be watched.
Right?
The difference between white people and Latino people. Oh, wow. Let's click on it.
So we didn't really even dive into any of your jokes from the Comedy Central bit, which I want to do before you go. Just really quickly, you do the good guy hat thing. I want to talk about that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. What inspired that idea? Was that the starting point of the joke? And then you were like, okay, what offensive jokes can I write? And then refer back to the hat as like the punchline. How did that come about?
Right. So I definitely start prop first. That's kind of like one of my go-tos. So I made that hat one time. I was like, oh, you can just make your own hats on like Vistaprint or whatever. So I was just like, I was just, hanging out one night. I was just like, oh, what if I got a hat that said I'm a good guy? Like, I just thought that would be funny as just to wear in public. And then now looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to wear that hat in public. People will start to be like, one time I got like at TSA, like, oh, you're a good guy, huh? And I was like, oh, I don't like this interaction at all. Yeah. I'm not gonna wear this.
Pandering.
Yeah. It was odd. But I got that hat and I was like, oh wow, it turned out pretty good. Maybe there's a way I can incorporate it on stage. Like I posted like on Instagram and got like a good reaction. I'm like, oh, people like this. Okay. So then I just got jokes that were in my stand-up, in my set, like without any context, just classic one-liners. And I was like, oh, I started to piece that all together. Those jokes definitely were already written and then combined with this hat. And then I thought of the last beat, like, how do I get out of it? And I'm selling these after the show. One for the ladies that says I'm a good guy written in pink. So I made one that was written in pink, and that made me laugh really hard to spend, an additional. That's a $40 bit right there, coming to you absolutely free. It was, yeah, I was proud of that, and I find it very interesting. Also, like I tried to layer it where it's like, you know, there are layers there that are kind of there. They're not the main point of it, but if you kind of break it down and you look at what other people say and do and the way they act, it's there's kind of some small details there that I'm pretty proud of. But then I would also get people coming up to me after being like, hey, can we buy one of those hats? I'm like, what? No, I don't have any more. I was just making a joke up there. I'm just, I was lying. And looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I could have made more money if I actually was selling hats. But, you know, I thought it was worth losing hundreds of dollars to be like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? I was joking up there after the show.
Yeah, I do love that. I think that was my favorite, but the pink one, because, you know, again, it's another, you pull the rug out, because, you know, and for the ladies, and then you play on the, you know, the blue and pink trope, like the genders. It's, yeah.
Just a construct, David.
It is just a construct. and I love any commentary on the construct. Like that's the kind of comedy that I look for. And I look for layers and simple jokes that do that. You do the if I were to go back in time and kill Hitler trope, but then you turn it on its head. The gynecologist one. I mean, all three of those jokes are just like that classic bait and switch. I really like the I don't know what it's like to kill a guy joke. I think that was, I mean, between that and the pink hat, like it was great.
To me, what's funny is that one's like a little bit like weird, like in some ways, or like that one's probably my biggest wordplay. Speaking about wordplay, Steven, that's one of my biggest ones. Is it hinges on saying I've never killed a guy, which is like kind of not the most common phrase. Definitely not as common of a phrase as I wish I could go back in time and kill Hitler. But that one, looking back, and I'm like, oh, I'm proud that one does work. Like if I land it, that one works.
Yeah.
I'm surprised if it doesn't land. Like that's funny.
It's a surprising, like a little bit weird. Like I find, you know, you can get away with weird. It's just, you know, how you do it, because people I don't know.
All right. When I was I headlined a show once. I've only, you know, done it so much after 7 or 8 years, but like the shut up, David. And then so I did 40 minutes, and I like the first 20 minutes I was basically bombing. And then I do the thing I do from now on, which is go, all right, guys, I get it. This is sucking hard, isn't it? And then I go right into exactly how bad, and then I start getting real with them, because usually I think bombing happens when you're a little bit fake or a little bit contrived, and they kind of smell that in some cases. And it's like not just, obviously there's also just not being funny, but like if you just, there's something that's just not passing their test, and they're not liking it, and then you start getting real with them, and then they're like, oh, okay, this is the real Steve. I like the real Steve. And then they start laughing if you can actually, you know, be funny. So it doesn't always work, but it's been working for me now that I go that route, going, all right, let's address the elephant in the room, and then it can work. So
that's a great way to do it. I've not come up with that yet. But the bits that I've talked ad nauseum about, of the reading the jokes, the audience and stuff, those are such typically big crowd pleasers that sometimes I'll like bomb for the first whole part of my set, and then the last 10 minutes are like, oh, where was this? We like ourselves. We like our own audience members saying that, not you.
Yeah. It's very centering, like it in the experience. Like it brings a presence to the room. Like when you address the elephant in the room, or you involve the audience, like it feels like a shared experience that is only happening in this moment of time. That brings the audience in. I find I bomb the most when I do what I think the audience is going to like. So if I watch a couple comics bomb, I'm like, okay, well, I have to shift what I normally do to meet the audience rather than, I mean, yeah, you have to meet the audience where they are, sure. But if you're not being yourself to do it, they've, like Steve was saying, they smell it. Yeah. And
also the lull.
With a what?
I was going to say, it's also, sometimes it's just a lull, and then you have to be like, all right, I got to bring the energy. And then, but yeah.
I find it's so frustrating when I am like, oh, this audience sucks. I think I gotta gotta pull out the crowd pleasers instead of doing what I wanted to do. And then I do the crowd pleasers and then they still bomb. And I'm like, why did I do that? I should have just done the stuff that I wanted to do and bombed with that. I'm a fool. I've both wasted my time and am still sad.
Yeah.
Didn't change my sadness.
Yeah, be more authentic when you bomb. You feel like less of an imposter,
or less. At the very least, just do what you want to do. Just do. I'd rather get some useful information. Like, oh well, this one actually did surprisingly get a decent pop, as compared to the rest of them, as opposed to being like, okay, I know this stuff works, and then I go and I bomb with it. I'm like, I don't know anything about anything.
Am I even Martin? Am I like what?
You can't laugh at that.